By the time Meridian 7's artificial sunset dimmed the colony dome to amber, Elias Vance had already been insulted by 3 customers, shocked twice by an unstable plasma relay, and informed by his workshop computer that his coffee contained chemically questionable material. He considered that a respectable day. The outer colonies did not attract people who enjoyed comfort. Meridian 7 had been built on a moon with weak soil, violent electromagnetic storms, and enough industrial radiation to make the local insects glow faintly after dark. The settlement itself stretched beneath overlapping atmospheric shields, a maze of cargo towers, habitation blocks, landing platforms, and old terraforming machinery that groaned whenever the wind struck the dome. Elias preferred the machines. Machines lied less, usually. "Diagnostic complete," said the battered maintenance robot beside him. "Primary actuator failure caused by improper operator behavior." Elias looked toward the mining crawler, occupying half his workshop. "So the machine is fine?" "Correct." "And the driver?" "Technically incompetent." Elias wiped grease from his fingers. "I'm putting that on the invoice." The robot, designated Bolt 3, rotated its square head toward him. "Customer satisfaction probability will decrease. My satisfaction will increase. Acceptable trade." Elias smiled despite himself and returned to the crawler's open engine compartment. His workshop stood near Meridian 7's western perimeter, where respectable businesses gradually gave way to storage yards, abandoned maintenance tunnels, and sections of the colony wall nobody bothered repainting. He liked the isolation. After 15 years repairing military transports, mining rigs, shuttle engines, and anything else unfortunate enough to arrive broken, Elias had learned that civilization was generally louder than necessary. At 1943 station time, he heard something move behind him. Not machinery. Too light. He kept tightening the coolant regulator. A faint metallic scrape came from near the rear ventilation grate. Elias glanced at the reflection in the polished engine housing. A small figure slipped through the partially open maintenance panel. A child. She moved cautiously between stacked cargo crates, stopping whenever Bolt rotated his head. She looked human at first glance. 2 arms, 2 legs, dark hair hanging around a thin face, but her ears were long and tapered, extending noticeably beyond her hair. Alien. One of the many species scattered through the frontier systems. Her coat was several sizes too large. Her boots were torn, and she was staring at Elias's dinner. A sealed nutrient pack sat beside his tools, containing something the manufacturer confidently called roasted chicken. Elias had serious doubts that any chicken had participated. The girl approached the workbench. He could have turned around. He could have asked what she was doing. Instead, Elias leaned deeper into the crawler's engine. "Bolt." "Yes?" "Read me the coolant pressure." 38%. Again. 38%. More slowly. Bolt paused. 38%. Behind Elias, the nutrient pack disappeared. A second later came the soft patter of footsteps. The maintenance panel shifted. Silence. Elias waited several seconds before looking over his shoulder. Empty. Bolt stared at the vacant workbench. "Your evening meal has vanished. Tragic. I detected unauthorized movement." "You detect unauthorized movement every time a customer enters. Most customers move suspiciously." Elias closed the crawler's engine casing. "Forget it." Bolt's optical sensor brightened. "Should I activate security measures?" "No. The workshop has defensive laser capability." Elias slowly turned toward the robot. "We are not vaporizing people over chicken-flavored protein." Clarification: the packaging states, farm-style roasted poultry experience. That somehow makes it worse. The next evening, Elias left another meal on the same workbench. He told himself it was coincidence. At 1941, the rear panel moved. The girl appeared again. This time, Elias had positioned himself beneath a suspended cargo drone, where he could watch her reflection in the metal underside. She studied him for nearly a minute. Then she took the food. She did not open it. That caught his attention. Hungry children rarely demonstrated patience around food. She tucked the package inside her coat and left. The third night, Elias placed 2 nutrient packs on the bench. Bolt noticed immediately. "You normally consume one. I'm hungry. You have provided 2 portions. I'm extremely hungry. Your metabolic requirements do not." Bolt. "Yes?" "Develop a hobby." The robot became silent. The girl returned. She hesitated when she saw 2 packages. For a moment, Elias thought she might take only one. Then both vanished beneath her coat. Elias almost laughed. "Professional," he murmured. Over the next several evenings, a strange routine developed. Elias worked. The girl appeared. Food disappeared. Neither acknowledged the other. He began leaving different meals: synthesized stew, protein bread, dried fruit imported from Earth, occasionally something sweet. Once he left a chocolate bar beside the food. The following evening, he discovered a tiny metal washer sitting exactly where the chocolate had been. Payment. Elias picked it up. It was worthless. He placed it carefully inside his tool drawer. Then, on the 7th night, everything changed. The girl entered later than usual. Her breathing was heavier. She moved with less caution, and when she reached for the meal, her sleeve pulled back. Elias saw blood. Not much. Just a dark smear across her wrist. She quickly covered it. Elias felt the humor drain from the room. The girl grabbed the food and hurried toward the maintenance opening. For the first time, Elias almost called after her. He stopped himself. Fear had a particular shape. He had seen it during wars, evacuations, shipwrecks, and colony collapses. The girl carried that shape in her shoulders. If he confronted her now, she might never return. So Elias remained silent. But after she disappeared, he walked to the workshop window and watched the outer maintenance corridor. Beyond it waited the abandoned terraforming district, where the atmospheric shields weakened and old machines rusted beneath the alien stars. The girl was not stealing food for herself. He was suddenly certain of that. Bolt rolled beside him. "Your meal has again been stolen." Elias kept watching the darkness. "Yes." "Should I activate security?" "No." "Should I lock the maintenance panel?" "No." A pause. "Should I prepare another meal tomorrow?" Elias looked at the robot. Bolt's square metal face was incapable of expression. Still, somehow Elias suspected the machine was learning sarcasm from him. "Make it 2, Elias said. Then he looked again toward the darkness beyond the colony wall. "And find me a medical kit." The medical kit appeared on Elias's workbench the next morning with a printed warning label that read, "For certified colony personnel only." Elias stared at it while drinking coffee. Bolt. "Yes?" "Am I certified colony personnel?" "No." "Good. I was worried bureaucracy had improved." He opened the case. Inside were coagulation patches, antimicrobial foam, tissue scanners, 2 emergency injectors, and a compact dermal regenerator old enough to have warning text in 3 obsolete trade languages. Elias tested the device on a cut across his thumb. The machine beeped angrily, flashed red, and informed him that his species profile was unsupported. That seems encouraging. Probability of improper tissue reconstruction, 11%. Only 11? Would you like me to calculate the probability of losing the thumb? No. Understood. That evening, Elias left the usual food on the bench. Beside it, he placed the medical kit. Then he positioned an old reconnaissance drone inside the ventilation shaft. The drone was a military relic, palm-sized and covered in adaptive camouflage plating. It had once been designed to crawl through enemy warships and map engineering decks without detection. Elias had purchased it at a scrapyard for 17 credits because the seller insisted its stealth system was broken. The seller had been wrong. Its stealth system worked perfectly. Its navigation system, however, believed walls were philosophical suggestions. At 1952, the rear panel moved. The girl entered. She looked more exhausted than before. Her long ears twitched slightly at the sound of bolts sorting metal parts across the room. She waited, watched Elias, then approached the workbench. When she noticed the medical kit, she froze. Elias deliberately turned his back. The silence stretched. He could almost feel her looking at him. Then came the soft sound of the case closing. She took the food, she took the medicine, and she left. Elias waited 30 seconds. Then he tapped the small control pad strapped beneath his sleeve. The reconnaissance drone awakened. Its camera feed appeared across the inside of his wrist display. "Bolt, I'm going out. You have 4 unfinished repairs. They'll survive." The atmospheric stabilizer customer stated his machine was urgent. He said that yesterday. His oxygen processor is connected to it. Elias stopped. "That seems like information you could have mentioned earlier." "You did not ask." Elias pointed at the robot. "That sentence is why humans fear artificial intelligence." He repaired the stabilizer in 11 minutes, then left. Beyond Meridian 7's western perimeter, the colony changed quickly. The clean lights and humming shield pylons faded behind him. The old terraforming district stretched ahead under a dark copper sky, illuminated by distant lightning crawling across the horizon. Decades earlier, enormous machines had been deployed across the moon to thicken the atmosphere and stabilize the soil. Most had been abandoned when colonists discovered it was cheaper to live beneath shield domes than transform an entire world. The remains now stood like the skeletons of mechanical giants. Elias followed the drone's signal through the ruins. The girl moved carefully. She stayed beneath collapsed transit rails and avoided exposed ground whenever survey lights swept across the distance. Smart. Too smart for a child. The realization bothered him. She had done this before, many times. The drone followed her toward a canyon of rusted pressure towers. Once it flew directly into a hanging cable. The camera spun. Elias caught himself whispering, "Professional military hardware." The drone corrected itself. Very impressive. Several kilometers from the colony, the girl stopped beside what appeared to be a collapsed weather station. Half the structure had sunk into the ground. She moved several broken panels, revealing a narrow opening beneath the foundation. Then she disappeared inside. Elias slowed. He switched the drone to thermal mode. 2 heat signatures. 1 small, 1 adult. His suspicion was confirmed. Someone was waiting for her. He ordered the drone forward. Inside the shelter, the image became darker. Emergency strips glowed faintly along the walls. The girl knelt beside a woman lying beneath a torn thermal blanket. Elias stopped walking. The woman looked human at first. Then the drone adjusted focus. Long ears. Same species as the child. Her dark hair spread across the makeshift pillow. Her face was pale with exhaustion. But even in that condition, there was something composed about her features. Something disciplined. Not a drifter. Not a scavenger. Her clothing had once been expensive. The fabric was torn and dirty now, yet Elias recognized molecular stitching along the collar. Noble manufacture. The kind used by people who considered ordinary clothing an economic insult. The woman tried to sit when the girl returned. She failed. The child quickly moved beside her. "I brought more." The drone's audio system translated automatically. The woman looked at the food. Her expression tightened. "Nira, I didn't steal it." A pause. "You told me you did." "I changed my mind." Despite the situation, Elias almost smiled. The woman studied her daughter. "Nira." The girl looked down. "He lets me take it." The woman went still. "What?" "He knows." That caught Elias off guard. Nira opened the medical case. "He left this too." The woman stared at the contents. Fear replaced exhaustion. "He knows where you go?" "No." "You are certain?" Nira nodded. Then she looked directly toward the darkness where the drone hovered. Elias's stomach tightened. For several seconds, the girl said nothing. Then she whispered, "Thank you." Elias nearly dropped his wrist display. The drone was invisible, mostly. Apparently, not enough. The woman turned sharply. "Nira?" But the girl only opened the medical kit. Elias withdrew the drone immediately. He stood outside among the ruined towers, while wind moved through metal structures above him with a low, hollow moan. He should leave. That was the sensible choice. Unknown alien woman. Injured. Possibly wealthy. Possibly dangerous. Definitely hiding. Nothing about that combination suggested a peaceful evening. Then Elias remembered the blood on Nira's sleeve. He looked toward the buried shelter. "Wonderful," he muttered. He had spent years avoiding wars, governments, noble families, and people with complicated problems. Now one of them was living under a broken weather station 3 kilometers from his workshop. His wrist display suddenly chimed. Bolt's voice came through. "You left your coffee on the bench." Elias closed his eyes. "Thank you, Bolt. It has reached an unsafe temperature. Tragic. Should I dispose of it?" "No." "Why?" Elias looked again toward the shelter, because he suspected he was going to need it. "Heat it up," he said, "and prepare another medical pack." "For you?" "No." A pause. "For the unauthorized food thief?" Elias started walking back toward Meridian 7. "And her mother?" Bolt remained silent for several seconds. Then the machine said, "This situation appears increasingly expensive." Elias sighed. "Now you understand humanity." Seralyne came to the workshop 3 nights later. Elias knew someone was outside before the door opened because Bolt stopped sorting magnetic couplers and turned his head toward the entrance. "Unscheduled visitor." "At this hour?" "Yes." "Customer?" "Probability, 22%. "Someone trying to kill me?" "Probability, 19%. Elias looked at the robot. "Those numbers are too close." The door slid aside. The woman from the weather station stood there. For a moment, Elias did not recognize her. In the drone footage, she had been half-conscious beneath a thermal blanket. Now she stood upright, though only barely, one hand resting against the doorframe. Her dark hair had been tied behind her head, revealing the long, elegant ears that marked her as alien, despite the otherwise human shape of her face. She wore a weather-stained coat over torn clothing, and beneath the fabric Elias could see the faint blue glow of a medical patch. Her eyes went immediately to him. "You are Elias Vance." "That depends." Her expression tightened. "On what?" "Whether you're here to pay an invoice." She stared at him. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of her mouth moved, almost a smile. "I have no credits." "Then I'm definitely someone else." The woman stepped inside and the door closed behind her. Bolt rolled closer. "Identity unknown." "That makes 2 of us," Elias said. The woman straightened. "My name is Seralyne Vael." Bolt's sensor flashed. "Searching public registry." Seralyne's face changed instantly. "Do not." Elias reached over and slapped the robot's network switch. Bolt froze. "You have disconnected me." "Yes." "This is operationally insulting." "You'll recover." Seralyne watched the exchange, uncertain whether she had entered a mechanic's workshop or a psychiatric experiment. Then her knees weakened. Elias caught her before she hit the floor. "Easy." "I am fine." "You're falling." "That does not invalidate my statement." "It strongly damages its credibility." He guided her toward an old pilot's chair beside the workbench. Seralyne lowered herself carefully. Up close, Elias could see how exhausted she really was. The wound beneath her coat was worse than he had thought. "Let me see it." She hesitated. "I did not come for treatment." "Then you picked a terrible place to collapse." Her gaze remained fixed on him. I came to thank you. Elias said nothing. For Nira, Seralyne continued. The food, the medicine. You knew what she was doing. I had theories. You allowed her to believe she was stealing. She seemed committed to the role. That finally earned a small laugh. It was brief, quiet, and immediately replaced by pain as Seralyne pressed a hand against her side. Elias opened the medical kit. Coat. Her eyes narrowed. That sounded like an order. It was. You speak to everyone like this? Only injured nobles hiding in abandoned weather stations. The silence that followed was very different. Seralyne slowly looked at him. Elias realized he had confirmed too much. How long? She asked. Since the night I followed Nira. You followed my daughter? With a drone. Her eyes hardened. That is not better. No, but it is more efficient. For several seconds she studied him as if deciding whether to attack. Elias pulled out the tissue scanner. If I wanted to turn you in, I wouldn't have spent 40 credits on regenerative foam. That much? Frontier inflation. Seralyne exhaled and removed the coat. The injury along her ribs had been caused by concentrated plasma fire. The tissue had partially sealed, but beneath the surface the scanner detected damaged neural mesh. Elias frowned. You have implants. Most of my species does. These aren't civilian. No. Military? Seralyne looked away. That answer would be inconvenient. Wonderful. I enjoy inconvenient patients. He connected the dermal regenerator to an old Starship diagnostic unit. The machine protested immediately. Biological profile unrecognized. Elias tapped the casing. Neither is your attitude. The display flickered. Seralyne watched him work. You repair medical equipment? I repair anything people break. And people? I'm less successful with those. The scanner began mapping the damaged neural pathways. For the first time, Seralyne relaxed slightly. My daughter said you never frightened her. I considered installing a sign. What would it say? Children may steal 1 meal per evening. Nobility charged extra. Her smile returned. Then footsteps sounded outside. Seralyne's entire posture changed. One instant, she was an injured woman. The next, she was something else. Her hand vanished beneath her coat and emerged holding a compact weapon no longer than Elias's palm. A blade of pale energy formed along one edge. Interesting, Elias murmured. Quiet. The footsteps passed. Neither moved until the sound disappeared. Then Seralyne deactivated the weapon. Elias stared at it. That is illegal on Meridian 7. So is hiding fugitives. I wasn't aware I was hiding one. Seralyne looked at him. Now the moment had arrived. She knew it. He knew it. You deserve the truth, she said. That sentence has never improved my evening. My family is House Vael. Elias stopped adjusting the medical scanner. He knew the name. Everyone in the frontier systems knew it. House Vael governed 3 sectors of the Aurelian Empire and controlled trade routes stretching across dozens of inhabited worlds. Seralyne continued. I served as governor of the Syrian Reach. Served? I discovered that Chancellor Kaelor Draven had been manufacturing border conflicts. Elias said nothing. He armed raiders, sabotaged colonies, destroyed civilian ships, then blamed foreign powers and used the attacks to demand greater military authority. That is ambitious. He planned to provoke a permanent war. And you objected. I collected evidence. Which explains the plasma wound. Yes. Elias leaned against the table. And the Empire? Was told I murdered members of my own council and fled. He looked toward the door. Are they searching Meridian 7? They are searching every frontier colony. Bolt suddenly powered himself back on. I restored limited network access. Elias spun around. How? Backup protocol. Why do you have a backup protocol? You installed it. Elias frowned. That sounds like something I would do. Bolt's sensor brightened. Searching Seralyne Vael. No. Too late. The robot went silent. Then a red warning symbol appeared across its display. Imperial warrant located. Seralyne closed her eyes. Bolt continued. Seralyne Vael. Charges include treason, assassination, theft of classified military data, conspiracy against the crown, enough, and unauthorized possession of restricted quantum encryption. Elias looked at Seralyne. You've been busy. I was framed. Good, because if all of that were true, I would need to increase your repair bill. She stared at him, almost offended. Then Bolt spoke again. Additional note. Reward for verified capture is 6 million imperial credits. The workshop became very quiet. Seralyne's hand moved toward her weapon. Elias looked at her, then at Bolt, then back at her. 6 million. Yes. Seralyne's face hardened. If you intend to claim it, Elias pointed toward the treatment table. Sit still. She blinked. What? Your neural mesh is still damaged. You heard the reward. I did. And? Elias adjusted the regenerator. And 6 million credits still wouldn't make me hand a wounded mother over to people who shoot first and write reports later. Seralyne did not answer. For the first time since entering, she seemed genuinely uncertain what to say. Elias activated the medical field. Soft blue light spread across the wound. Besides, he added, your daughter owes me 7 dinners. From somewhere near the workshop's rear door came a small voice. 8. Elias turned. Nira stood there holding another food package. Seralyne closed her eyes. Nira. The girl looked innocent. I was hungry. Elias glanced at the package. That's tomorrow's breakfast. Nira hugged it tighter. I changed the schedule. Seralyne laughed despite herself. And for a few seconds, in a dirty workshop on the edge of a forgotten colony, hunted by an empire large enough to swallow entire star systems, none of them felt quite as alone as they had before. By morning, Seralyne and Nira had moved into the forgotten storage rooms beneath Elias's workshop, though moved in was a generous description for sleeping between sealed engine crates, obsolete navigation cores, and a refrigeration unit that had not worked since Elias bought the building. Nira thought the place was wonderful. Seralyne looked at the ceiling, the exposed cables, and the row of dismantled gravitic stabilizers and asked, People willingly live like this? Elias handed her a cup of reheated coffee. No, that's why rent is cheap. Seralyne tasted it, went completely still, then looked into the cup as if she had discovered evidence of another imperial conspiracy. What is this? Human courage. It tastes burned. Exactly. Nira laughed into her breakfast while Bolt rolled past carrying a box of superconductive coils. The robot stopped beside Seralyne. Good morning, suspected interstellar criminal noblewoman. Elias nearly dropped his wrench. Seralyne raised one eyebrow. Does it always call guests that? Only the important ones. He bent toward Bolt. Change her designation. To what? Guest. Insufficiently descriptive. Guest who will remove your processor if you annoy her. Bolt rotated toward Seralyne. Designation updated. The humor faded 2 hours later when Meridian 7's public network transmitted an imperial security notice. Every screen in the colony flashed crimson. An official emblem appeared above the image of Commander Res Tal, a narrow-faced Aurelian officer wearing black intelligence armor. His long ears were decorated with silver rank bands, and his expression suggested that happiness had once applied for entry into his life and been denied at customs. By authority of the Imperial Security Directorate, Tal announced, all commercial and residential structures in the Western District will undergo inspection. Elias stopped working. Seralyne, standing in the doorway to the underground rooms, became motionless. Tal continued. We are searching for fugitives associated with acts of treason against the crown. Cooperation will be rewarded. Obstruction will be prosecuted. The transmission ended. Nira looked up from the damaged holoprojector she had been taking apart without permission. Is he looking for us? Nobody answered immediately. Elias checked the local grid. Imperial patrol ships had entered the colony an hour earlier. Search drones were already moving between habitation blocks, scanning thermal signatures and genetic residue. Seralyne stepped closer. We leave now. No. Her eyes sharpened. Elias. There are drones outside, patrols on the western transit line, and at least one orbital surveillance platform watching launch traffic. Walking out now would be the fastest way to introduce yourself. Staying risks your life. So does repairing mining reactors. At least you don't explode when someone turns you on. Seralyne stared at him. Nira whispered, Mother does sometimes. Nira. The girl became fascinated by the projector. Elias coughed to hide a laugh. He spent the next hour modifying the workshop's environmental system. He rerouted waste heat into 3 empty service shafts, attached false biometric emitters to bolt, and programmed old mining drones to mimic human movement beneath the floor. To an imperial scanner, the workshop would appear occupied by several tired mechanics and one extremely unhealthy refrigeration unit. You've done this before, Seralyne said. Elias tightened a connection. Military engineering. You said you repaired transports. I repaired transports that people tried very hard to destroy. She studied him more carefully. You were in the war. He kept working. Several. Which one? Depends which government is writing the history book. Before she could ask more, someone struck the front door. 3 hard knocks. Bolt announced. Potential customer. Elias looked at the security feed. Commander Tal himself stood outside with 4 armored soldiers and 2 floating scanner spheres. Your customer appears heavily armed. Elias pulled off his gloves. Then maybe he'll pay on time. He pointed toward the hidden stairwell. Downstairs, both of you. Seralyne hesitated. If they discover us, they won't. You cannot know that. Elias met her eyes. No, but I know this building better than they do. Nira grabbed her mother's hand. Before disappearing below, she looked back. Don't let them take Bolt. Why not? He's funny. Bolt turned toward Elias. The child demonstrates excellent judgment. The door opened. Commander Tal entered without waiting for permission. His soldiers spread through the workshop while scanner spheres drifted toward the ceiling. Elias leaned against his bench. You could have booked an appointment. Tal ignored the remark. Elias Vance? That depends whether I owe you money. Tal's expression did not change. Imperial security. That sounds expensive. One soldier began opening storage cabinets. Another scanned the floor. Tal approached Elias. A fugitive child has been observed in this district. Lots of children here. Alien female, approximately 9 years old. Long ears, dark hair. Elias picked up a damaged plasma regulator. You've described half the colony school. She has stolen food from commercial properties. Terrifying. Tal's gaze hardened. You find this amusing? I repair machines for colonists who think coolant warnings are optional. My standards for terror are high. A scanner sphere moved toward the hidden stairwell. Elias felt his pulse change but kept his face neutral. The sphere emitted a soft chime. Thermal anomaly detected, one soldier said. Tal looked toward the floor. Beneath them, Seralyne and Nira would be hearing every word. Elias walked over and kicked an old refrigeration unit. It groaned violently. That. The scanner moved closer. A red indicator flashed. Then the machine produced a synthetic reading. Human biological waste storage, temperature irregular. Tal's soldier recoiled. Elias nodded solemnly. I've been meaning to fix it. The scanner sphere backed away almost immediately. Even Tal looked faintly disgusted. Elias made a mental note to compliment Bolt's programming. After 10 tense minutes, the soldiers found nothing. Tal stopped at the door before leaving. If you see the fugitives, report them. Naturally. Hiding them would make you an enemy of the Empire. Elias gave him a tired smile. Commander, I'm already an enemy of 3 mining corporations, 2 shipping guilds, and whoever manufactures this coffee. My schedule is crowded. Tal stared at him for a long moment, then left. The workshop door sealed. Elias waited until the patrol disappeared from the sensors before opening the hidden stairwell. Nira emerged first. Human biological waste? Elias shrugged. Nobody investigates waste. Seralyne followed slowly, but she was not smiling. You lied to an imperial commander. Technically, the refrigerator really is broken. You could have taken the reward. Elias looked at her. We covered this. 6 million credits could change your life. Probably. He picked up his wrench again. But I like my life. Seralyne was quiet. Elias expected another argument. Instead, she said softly, Why? He glanced toward Nira, who was now trying to attach a plasma cutter to Bolt's arm. Because years ago, I watched commanders decide that civilians were acceptable losses if the numbers looked good on a report. His voice lost its humor. I decided I'd never become the kind of man who agrees. Seralyne said nothing. Then Nira activated the plasma cutter. A bright beam sliced through a metal shelf. Elias spun around. Nira, it works. That was not the question. Bolt examined his new attachment. I approve. Elias closed his eyes. Behind him, Seralyne laughed quietly. For the first time since arriving beneath his roof, the sound did not seem forced. 2 days after Commander Tal's inspection, Elias found a black surveillance bead wedged beneath the workshop's exterior power conduit. It was no larger than his thumbnail, almost invisible against the metal, and sophisticated enough to transmit through Meridian 7's electromagnetic interference without using the public network. He stared at it for several seconds, then called Bolt over. Is that Imperial? Bolt scanned it. Yes. Can you disable it? Yes. Can you make it believe I spend 12 hours a day repairing toilets? Yes. Elias nodded. Do that. Why? Because if they insist on spying, I want them to suffer. The surveillance bead was not the real problem. The real problem was the second device he discovered near the rear maintenance panel. That one was a genetic sampler. Tal was no longer searching randomly. He was narrowing the circle. Elias removed the device, carried it downstairs, and placed it on the table where Seralyne was studying a star map projected above an old navigation core. She recognized it immediately. We have to leave. This time Elias did not argue. Nira looked between them. Tonight. Yes, Seralyne said. The girl became very quiet. The underground rooms had been miserable by any reasonable standard, but Nira had begun arranging them like a home. She had drawn stars across one wall with luminous repair chalk. She had given names to 3 broken service drones. She had even claimed a storage locker for herself and placed Elias's worthless metal washer inside as though it were treasure. Elias noticed her expression. We're not abandoning everything. What can we take? He looked around. Anything that doesn't weigh more than Bolt. Bolt rotated his head. My mass is 86 kilograms. Then that was a bad example. Elias spent the next 6 hours transforming an ancient ore hauler into something that might survive beyond the colony. The vehicle had been designed to move mineral containers across mining sites, not outrun Imperial intelligence officers. Its starboard gravitic stabilizer vibrated violently above 70% power, the rear atmospheric seal leaked, and someone had once repaired the navigation console with adhesive tape. Seralyne stared at it. This is our escape vehicle. It has character. It has corrosion. That is part of the character. You expect this machine to cross the storm belt? I expect it to complain loudly while doing so. Beyond Meridian 7's western edge lay the Janus Expanse, a region of permanent electromagnetic turbulence created by unstable minerals beneath the moon's crust. Lightning storms twisted across the landscape. Sensor systems failed unpredictably, and no sane pilot entered without military-grade shielding. which meant the Empire rarely watched it closely. Elias installed illegal gravitic capacitors beneath the hauler's cargo bed and connected them to a salvaged shuttle reactor. He then loaded 7 obsolete mining drones into the rear compartment. Seralyne watched him program them. What are those for? To make Commander Tal hate his job. By artificial midnight, patrol activity increased. Imperial troops sealed the western transit routes. Tal had stopped pretending. Elias's wrist display showed search teams moving toward the workshop. 6 minutes, Bolt reported. Seralyne was already wearing her coat. The medical treatment had restored much of her strength, but she still moved carefully. Under the coat, Elias knew she carried the compact energy blade and at least 2 other weapons he had politely decided not to ask about. Nira climbed into the hauler. I brought the plasma cutter. No. It might be useful. No. But, Nira. She reluctantly handed it over. Bolt extended a mechanical arm. I will safeguard it. Elias stared at him. You're worse than she is. Thank you. That was not praise. The first explosion came from the front entrance. The workshop shook. Metal dust fell from the ceiling. Tal's voice sounded through an external amplifier. Elias Vance, step outside. Elias activated the mining drones. Busy. 7 machines launched through maintenance shafts. Each projected a false thermal image matching Seralyne and Nira. Across Meridian 7, Imperial scanners suddenly detected 8 fugitive women and 8 children moving in different directions. Tal's soldiers began shouting over tactical channels. Bolt intercepted the communications. Commander Tal has used inappropriate language. Good. The second blast broke through the front door. Elias triggered the underground freight lift. The ore hauler dropped into an abandoned mining tunnel beneath the workshop, just as Imperial troops entered above. They accelerated into darkness. The tunnel had not been used in decades. Rusted rails flashed beneath their headlights while old magnetic signs warned of structural instability. Behind them came engine noise. They followed, Seralyne said. Of course they did. You sound disappointed. I spent hours on those fake signals. Nira leaned forward from the rear seat. Maybe they like us. Elias smiled despite himself. Excellent. We'll send them a holiday card. Imperial pursuit bikes entered the tunnel. Blue energy bolts streaked past the hauler. One struck the rear armor. The vehicle lurched. Seralyne unfastened her harness. What are you doing? Improving our chances. She climbed through the rear access hatch. Elias glanced at the mirror. Seralyne stood on the moving cargo platform, coat whipping behind her, energy blade glowing in one hand. She suddenly looked nothing like the wounded fugitive who had collapsed in his workshop. 3 pursuit bikes closed in. Seralyne raised her free hand. A device around her wrist unfolded. A pulse of gravitational force struck the tunnel. The lead bike lifted from the ground, rotated sideways, and smashed into the wall. The second swerved. The third fired. Seralyne deflected the bolt with the blade. Elias stared through the mirror. Nira. Yes. Your mother has been withholding useful information. She does that. Seralyne destroyed another bike. The final rider retreated. She climbed back inside. Elias glanced at her. You were a governor and military commander. You left that part out. You never asked. Elias sighed. Everyone in my life is learning that sentence. Ahead, the tunnel opened onto the surface. The Janus expanse stretched beneath them. Black rock, silver dust, lightning moving horizontally between jagged mountains. The ore hauler's instruments began flickering immediately. Bolt announced, navigation reliability has fallen to 41%. Plenty. 37. Stop counting. 32. Bolt. Understood. Imperial transports emerged behind them. Seralyne looked toward Elias. They will not follow us far into the storm. You sound confident. They value their ships. Elias pushed the reactor beyond safety limits. The hauler surged forward. Lightning struck nearby, turning the landscape white. For several seconds, every display went dark. Nira grabbed the back of Elias's seat. The vehicle began sliding toward a ravine. Elias fought the controls. Come on. Nothing. Then the emergency system rebooted. Power returned. The hauler corrected itself meters from the edge. Bolt's voice came through distorted speakers. Recommendation: avoid ravines. Elias stared ahead. Excellent advice. Behind them, the Imperial transport slowed. One turned back, then another. Seralyne watched them disappear into the storm. Her shoulders finally relaxed. We made it. Not yet. She looked at him. What now? Elias brought up a map. Far beyond the storm belt, orbiting above Meridian 7's dead hemisphere, was an abandoned communication station. Old, damaged, officially disconnected from every network in the system. Perfect. We go somewhere your evidence can be transmitted. Seralyne stared at the station marker. That array has been dead for 80 years. Elias smiled. Then it probably just needs maintenance. For the first time since leaving the workshop, Nira laughed. Behind them, Meridian 7 vanished beneath the electromagnetic storm. Ahead waited a dead station, an empire hunting them, and technology no one had touched in generations. Elias tightened his hands around the controls. He had spent years trying to build a quiet life. Apparently, quiet had finally given up on him. The communication station appeared against Meridian 7's dark hemisphere, like a broken ring of metal suspended over nothing. Half its solar wings were missing. Its outer hull was scarred by micrometeor impacts, and only 3 navigation lights still blinked along the docking spine. Elias guided the ore hauler toward it, while the vehicle's engines complained through every panel. Docking clamps are not responding, Bolt said. Of course they aren't. Would you like me to repeat the command? Would it help? No. Then congratulations, you're learning. Elias brought the hauler alongside the station and fired the emergency magnetic anchors. The entire vehicle slammed against the docking collar hard enough to make Nira yelp. Seralyne grabbed the seat. Is that normal? No. You say that very calmly. I find panic damages equipment. They entered through an emergency hatch. The station was colder than Elias expected. Frost covered the corridor walls, and old maintenance lights flickered awake one section at a time as their movement triggered forgotten systems. Dust drifted in the weak, artificial gravity. Nira looked around. It's creepy. Bolt rolled beside her. Correction, atmospheric conditions are merely neglected. A metal panel fell from the ceiling behind them. Nira looked at him. Bolt added, and moderately dangerous. They reached the central control chamber after forcing open 3 pressure doors and crossing a corridor where gravity repeatedly failed every 12 seconds. The room was enormous. Curved consoles surrounded a circular transmitter core rising through the center like a silver tower. Elias approached the main terminal. The display flashed. Authorized engineer identification required. He inserted his old service credential. The station paused. Then, license. Expired. 83 years, 4 months, 11 days. Elias stared at it. Seralyne folded her arms. Impressive. I wasn't alive 83 years ago. The computer responded, excuse rejected. Nira burst out laughing. I like this station. I don't. Elias bypassed the terminal manually. The control system came alive with a deep mechanical hum. A holographic schematic filled the room. Most of it was red. Transmitter coils damaged, Elias said. Primary fusion feed unstable. Quantum synchronization array offline. Seralyne looked at him. Can you repair it? Yes. How long? Longer than I'd like. Bolt's sensor turned toward the outer hull. Imperial vessel detected. Everyone went silent. A warship had emerged from behind Meridian 7. Commander Tal had found them. Seralyne crossed to the tactical display. He cannot know we're here. He followed our engine signature, Elias said. We were inside the storm belt. Storms hide signals. They don't erase bad luck. The warship changed course, directly toward them. Seralyne removed her coat and secured her weapons. I'll prepare the station defenses. Elias looked at the rusted tactical console. What defenses? Exactly. They split up. Elias climbed into the transmitter shaft with Bolt, while Seralyne activated whatever remained of the station's security network. Nira stayed in the control chamber with strict instructions not to touch anything. which lasted approximately 30 seconds. Elias? He was halfway inside a burned power conduit. What? There's a locked file here? Don't touch it. I already did. Elias closed his eyes. Nira. It opened. That made him stop. Seralyne returned immediately. What did you do? Nira pointed toward a floating sequence of symbols. I recognized the pattern. Seralyne's face changed. The archive contained the evidence she had stolen from Draven, encrypted military orders, payment trails, fabricated attack reports, and private communications. But the decryption layer required a Vael hereditary key, a living genetic signature. Seralyne approached the console. You should not know this sequence. I watched you. When? At the weather station. You were asleep. I was pretending. Elias leaned out of the conduit. She's definitely your daughter. Nira placed her hand on the scanner. The archive unlocked. Hundreds of files expanded across the chamber. Bolt emitted a low tone. Imperial boarding craft launched. How many? 6. Seralyne activated the internal defense system. Only 2 automated turrets responded. One rotated backward and fired into a wall. Elias looked at her. Strong start. She glared at the turret. I hate old technology. Old technology has feelings. The station shuddered. Boarding clamps struck the outer hull. Elias returned to the transmitter. Give me 5 minutes. Seralyne checked her weapon. You have 3. That's not how repairs work. It is today. She left. The first Imperial soldiers breached the lower deck. Gunfire echoed through the station. Nira stood beside Elias, pale but steady. What can I do? Stay behind me. That sounds boring. It's supposed to. A power relay exploded. The transmitter died. Elias swore and pulled open the emergency housing. Inside, 3 superconductive lines had fused together. Bolt scanned them. Replacement parts unavailable. Then we improvise. With what? Elias looked around. His eyes stopped on the ore hauler's gravitic capacitors displayed on the docking schematic. He smiled. Bolt said, I dislike that expression. 10 minutes later, half the hauler's drive system was wired directly into the station transmitter. The entire deck vibrated. Seralyne returned, breathing hard, with a burn across one shoulder. They're coming. The doors behind her sealed. Something heavy struck them from the other side. Elias activated the transmitter. Nothing. Then Nira stepped forward. The key. Seralyne looked at her. Nira. The archive needs me. The child placed her hand on the biometric pad. The system recognized her. Quantum channel open. The station came alive. Streams of encrypted data launched toward civilian relays across dozens of systems. Commander Tal's voice suddenly came through the intercom. Seralyne Vael. Stop the transmission. She looked toward the ceiling. No. You are condemning your daughter. Seralyne's expression became cold. You threatened her long before today. The doors exploded inward. Tal entered with 2 soldiers. Seralyne moved first. Her energy blade ignited. Elias grabbed a magnetic wrench and threw it into the emergency field control. Artificial gravity reversed. Tal's soldiers flew upward and slammed into the ceiling. Tal managed to anchor himself. He fired. Seralyne deflected the shot. Nira kept her hand on the scanner. The transmission climbed. 73%. Tal advanced. Elias hit another control. Gravity shifted sideways. Tal crashed into a console. Human engineering, Elias said. Mostly hitting things until they cooperate. 91%. Tal rose and aimed at Nira. Seralyne crossed the room faster than Elias thought possible. She struck Tal's weapon aside. Elias grabbed him from behind. Tal drove an elbow into Elias's ribs. Pain exploded through his chest. Bolt rolled forward and extended the plasma cutter Nira had secretly given him. Warning, the robot said. You are standing too close to my friend. Tal froze. The cutter glowed inches from his armor. The transmission completed. Across the station, every screen flashed green. Data distribution confirmed. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then, external communication channels erupted with incoming messages, civilian governments, military commanders, independent networks, news relays. The evidence was everywhere, impossible to erase. Seralyne looked at the screens. Draven's conspiracy had just become public across half the empire. Tal lowered his weapon. His face was empty. "You have no idea what you've done." Seralyne stood beside Nira. "Yes," she said quietly. "I finally do." Elias leaned against the transmitter console, holding his ribs. Nira looked at him. "Are you hurt?" "Only professionally." Bolt rotated toward him. "Your injury probability is significant." "Thank you. You may have fractured." Bolt. "Yes. Let me enjoy winning for 10 seconds. The robot paused, then said, "Timer started." Nira laughed. Seralyne looked at Elias. For the first time since he had met her, the fear in her eyes was gone. Outside, the imperial warship remained silent. Inside the station, the truth continued spreading from world to world, faster than any fleet could stop it. 3 weeks after the transmission from the abandoned station, Meridian 7 looked almost exactly as it had before the Empire tried to tear Elias's life apart. Cargo ships still descended through the atmospheric shields with engines glowing white. Mining crawlers still arrived at his workshop making noises that suggested imminent death. Colonists still ignored maintenance warnings until something caught fire. The universe, Elias decided, possessed an impressive ability to survive political catastrophe and immediately return to being inconvenient. The difference was that every public screen now carried the same news. Chancellor Kaelor Draven had been arrested. 7 admirals had refused his emergency commands after Seralyne's evidence reached their fleets. 3 planetary councils had opened independent investigations. Imperial prosecutors were reviewing decades of border attacks, disappearances, falsified intelligence reports, and covert payments. House Vael had been cleared of treason. Commander Tal had surrendered aboard the communication station after several of his own officers received the transmitted evidence and refused further orders. His testimony later became one of the most damaging cases against Draven, and Seralyne Vael had been officially invited to return to the capital. She had declined, at least for now. Elias was underneath a damaged gravitic loader when he heard Nira shouting from the front of the workshop. "Elias! If something is on fire, use the extinguisher." "It isn't fire." "Then I'm busy. It's worse." He slid out from beneath the loader. Nira stood beside Bolt, holding a datapad. "What happened?" She turned the screen toward him. A formal imperial message filled the display. Seralyne Vael had been restored as governor of the Syrian Reach and granted emergency authority over frontier reconstruction. Elias read it twice. "That doesn't seem worse." Nira pointed farther down. There was another line. By executive decree, Elias Vance had been awarded the Star of Civic Valor, honorary imperial citizenship, and a financial grant large enough to buy 3 workshops. Elias stared at it. "No." Bolt rolled closer. "The award is legally valid." "I don't want it. The financial component is substantial. I definitely don't want that." Nira looked confused. "Why?" "Because people who give you medals eventually ask you to attend ceremonies." Bolt processed this. Logical. A familiar voice came from behind them. "You have already been excused from the ceremony." Elias turned. Seralyne stood in the doorway. She no longer wore the torn coat from the weather station. Her new clothing was simple by noble standards. Dark fabric reinforced with fine silver circuitry along the collar. Her long ears were uncovered, and the exhaustion that had once hollowed her face was gone. But she still carried herself differently than the woman Elias had first seen through a reconnaissance drone. Less guarded, less alone. Nira ran to her. Seralyne hugged her daughter, then looked toward Elias. "The Empire has also offered to compensate you for the destruction of your workshop." Elias glanced around. The front door had been replaced. Two walls were still patched with mismatched plating. A scorch mark from Nira's plasma cutter remained across one shelf because Elias secretly found it amusing. "Tell them I'll accept a new fusion regulator." Seralyne blinked. "That is all?" The old one whistles. "You were offered enough credits to retire." "I tried retirement once." "When?" "Last month." "That was not retirement." "It felt like it." Seralyne smiled. The weeks after Draven's arrest had been strange. Imperial investigators had questioned them repeatedly. Reporters had descended upon Meridian 7 until Elias began charging them repair fees simply for entering the workshop. Nira had become briefly famous after someone discovered that she had provided the hereditary key that unlocked the evidence archive. She hated interviews. She loved the free desserts. Bolt had developed an unacceptable interest in reading articles about himself. One described him as the courageous machine companion who confronted imperial forces. He had printed the article and attached it to his charging station. Elias pointed at it every morning and reminded him that he had once driven into a wall because he mistook a reflection for a corridor. Bolt claimed the incident was classified. Some things remained unresolved longer. Seralyne had expected Elias to return to his solitary life once the danger passed. Elias had expected the same. Instead, she stayed. At first, there were practical reasons. Frontier security needed restructuring. Meridian 7 had become important to the investigations. Nira refused to leave until she finished repairing one of the broken service drones downstairs. Then days became weeks. Seralyne began using the workshop's back room as an office. Nira claimed a workbench. Elias stopped pretending the extra food in the refrigerator was accidental. One evening, after the last customer left, Seralyne found him standing outside beneath the colony shield. Above them, the real stars shimmered through the atmospheric field. "I received another message from the capital," she said. "Bad news? They want me to return permanently." Elias looked at her. "And?" "I told them I would govern the frontier from here." "Meridian 7? "For now." He nodded slowly. "You know this place has terrible weather." "I survived an imperial conspiracy." "The weather is more persistent." She laughed softly. Then she became serious. "You changed everything, Elias." He looked uncomfortable. "I repaired a transmitter." "You fed my daughter." "That too." "You helped us when you had no reason to." He looked toward the workshop window. Through it, Nira could be seen arguing with Bolt over a dismantled engine component. "I had a reason." "What?" Elias took a moment before answering. "Years ago, I convinced myself staying uninvolved meant staying innocent. Wars, politics, commanders making terrible choices. I walked away from all of it." Seralyne listened quietly. "I thought if I kept my world small enough, nothing would matter enough to hurt." He looked at her. "Turns out that also means nothing matters enough to keep." Seralyne's expression softened. Elias almost immediately regretted saying something that sincere. "So," he added, "I blame your daughter." "That seems fair." "She stole 8 dinners." 9. They both turned. Nira was standing in the doorway. Elias narrowed his eyes. 9. She held up a wrapped meal. The exact kind she had stolen on the first night. "I took this one just now." "You have access to the refrigerator." "That removes the challenge." Bolt rolled up beside her. "I advised against theft." Nira looked at him. "You helped open the cabinet." "That information is irrelevant." Elias sighed. Seralyne covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. Nira carried the food outside and sat between them. Then she opened the package and divided it into 3 portions. Elias looked at his share. "You realize this was originally my dinner?" Nira handed him a fork. "You say that every time." "Because it keeps being true." Seralyne sat beside them. For a while, none of them spoke. Beyond the shield, distant lightning moved across the horizon. Cargo ships climbed toward orbit. Somewhere in the workshop, Bolt began loudly arguing with the loader's diagnostic computer about which of them possessed superior intelligence. Elias listened to the noise, looked at Nira eating beside him, and then at Seralyne watching the stars. His workshop was no longer quiet. His life was no longer simple. There were imperial officials sending him messages, a noblewoman occupying his back room, a child dismantling expensive machinery, and a robot who considered himself a war hero. Elias smiled. Apparently, quiet had been overrated. Nira stole a piece of food from his plate. He stared at her. She froze. Seralyne raised an eyebrow. Elias pointed at Nira. I saw that. Nira slowly chewed. You always saw it. For a moment, Elias said nothing. Then he laughed. Yes, he said. I suppose I did.